Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Jamila and we are here to film our first book video. I'm super excited. This is my first face-to-face video, so if you're wondering who's the face behind the voice, it's me. So yes, we're just going to hop in. I read, I believe, 9 books in January, so yes, we're doing a January wrap-up. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to give a brief synopsis of the books I read without any spoilers, and the books that I want to really go into detail about, I will like do spoilers at the end, and I'm gonna try to timestamp it. Okay, so let's just hop right in to the physical books I read. Yeah, I think I'll do it that way. So I'm looking down at my iPad to look at my Goodreads app because I'm using my phone to film. So, and yes guys, tell me if this setup is okay, if the light is okay, if I need to improve anything, because it is my first like face-to-face video. And yeah, I might be a little chatty because I'm tired because I just got off work, but yeah. So the first book we read was Jack and Jill by James Patterson. This is the 3rd book in the Alex Cross series. This is the 3rd book. I really enjoyed this book. This book is basically about, well, it features Alex Cross, who's like, I believe he's a forensic psychologist of some sort. And he works with the police department to help find, you know, more of the serial killer type people. And so yeah, he has a whole storyline going on, because I think the backstory behind him, I mean, this isn't a spoiler, you know this just by reading the first book, the first 3 pages. His wife passed away suddenly and he's raising his 2 children. He lives with his grandma who raised him. She's helping him raise his children while he does these things. And so this was the 3rd book, and this book was, there's like 2 situations going on. One, he still lives like in the inner city where he grew up, and there's Black children being killed. There's a serial killer, so he's trying to work on that, but the higher ups are bringing him in because they want him to help find these serial killer who's killing like politicians and higher up people. So I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. It's okay, 5 stars for me. I'm being more I'm not just giving 5 stars because it's a good book or something like this. This is of course a mystery thriller. If you know anything about, I wouldn't say thriller, like mystery, I guess you say thriller, but I'm more like strict with my 5 stars now. But this book was just okay. It was a good book. It was like a 4 star. It kept like, the twists and turns are really good. So I love that. You think you know who killed him, who's the serial killer, then you don't. But I truly love Alex Cross's character. Love this. If you're into mystery or thriller, I would definitely suggest you pick this up. So the next book I read was The Darkest Minds. I hope this is gonna show correctly, I don't know. The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. This was the first book I ever read by her. I'm assuming it's a woman, but this is more of a dystopian type of book, but not, there's actually a movie about this book, which I have not brought myself to watch the movie because I don't know, sometimes movies just ruin things for me. But this is basically about this girl named Ruby, who on her 10th birthday, she woke up, and basically the kids, is more a dystopian type of book, if you will, like, you know, government, and they're trying to, you know, fix whatever's happening in the government. So basically, long story short, kids were hitting puberty and they were either dying from this random disease, if you will. But the kids who didn't die ended up with these special powers. And they were sent off to rehabilitation camps. And they weren't rehabilitating them at all. And it was just awful. And she ended up escaping from the camp. And then she ended up meeting some other kids who had escaped from their camps as well. And this book gives you found family, it gives you romance, it's dystopian. It's just so good. I cried at the end. I literally ended up reading it because I do most of my reading at work, but sometimes I do read at home as well. And this book, I was in shambles, so I'm glad I read the end at home. This was a 5-star. There are multiple books behind this, but the ending really got me. If you love, it's dystopian, but not like a game, if you will. It's not Hunger Games type dystopian. But it's so good. I love this book. I want to read the other ones, but I don't know if it could live up to the hype. And I'm a person, I don't want to ruin books, you know what I'm saying? So that's this book. I just absolutely adored it. And then, okay, the next book I read was Good Girl, Bad Girl by Michael Robotham. And Michael Robotham, I've read a few of his other books. He is actually a former investigative journalist. And he has like, his books are psychological thrillers type. And this book, I actually read this book backwards because this is the first book and I read the second one. If I can look on here it is. When She Was Good, I read this one first. This one, you should read Good Girl, Bad Girl first and then read When She Was Good because that's how, but I actually read this one. But even though I kind of knew how some of the things ended, some parts I didn't. So it didn't completely ruin it for me. And I still gave this book up 4 stars. I really felt like it was maybe like a 4.5. But like I said, I'm more strict with my 5 stars. So this book, like I said, similar to the James Patterson book, the Alice Cross character, Cyrus Haven is a forensic psychologist in this as well. In his story, he has trauma. He basically came home one day and found like his family passed away and his brother had did it. So I guess that's kind of how he came about into being a forensic psychologist and things of that nature. So in this book, there's a little girl by the name of Evie, and he's brought into her case to kind of figure out, she's in like a group home for like, you know, disobedient children, I guess you would say. And she wants to like be emancipated because she's like, I'm about to be 18, blah, blah, blah. But the problem is no one really knows how old she is because they found her in a house and she never told them her name and different things like that. So he just takes a liking to this girl. So you have that. But also, he's also working another case. So, while dealing with her. So he's working this other case about this, you know, the perfect American teenager goes missing and they're trying to find out who took her and all of that thing. So it's really a lot of twists and turns of that. It gets very interesting about who took her, finding it was a lot of family secrets going on and things of that nature. It was really good. So I definitely would suggest this. If you love a good James Patterson book, Michael Robotham is amazing. Super amazing. I love his books. So yeah, there's that. So the next book, OMG, you guys. Colleen Hoover, Verity. I read Verity. I do love a good Colleen Hoover book because I know there's a lot of controversy. People say that, you know, she romanticizes trauma or something like that. But I feel like, I know we're not talking about this, I feel like everything's not perfect. Some things are messy in life. Sometimes we have to, you know, deal with situations we don't want to deal with to a certain extent. Let me just go here. But this book, I gave it a 2-star. And I was here for it at first. Like, I'm like, okay. Okay, so this is about a writer named Lowen Ashley. And she's like a struggling writer, and her mom just passed away, and she gets this opportunity to write for this like best-selling Times author who was in an accident. And she doesn't really know what happened or whatever, and at first she doesn't want to do it because she doesn't like publicity and things of that nature. But then she is convinced because the husband basically convinces her to go down there. And she finds she's supposed to be working on like I think she had like a series that she was working on. The best time selling author had a series. Her name was, let's see, Verity. Verity had was the best time selling author. And so Lowen went down there to finish up her series that she was doing. And she had to go to her home, and she meets Verity's son, and of course she had already met the husband at the meeting and things of that nature. And so she's looking through manuscripts in her office, blah blah, and she finds her diary, like that she was writing. Basically, she was writing her autobiography, basically. And this autobiography, it was just very disturbing, like very disturbing. This has, if you have children, you might not want to read this. If you have lost your, it's just, and only thing I can say, it was just effed up. Like, for many, you think one person's effed up, and then in the end, they're all effed up. And then the ending, the last, like, chapter was just awful. It was just like so unbelievable. Like, it was not believable. It did not make sense. It was just, this book, it was horrible and effed up, but it was one of those I just had to keep reading to like get to the end. So yeah, the worst book I read from her, and probably if I would have read this first, I would have never wanted to read anything from her. But I do enjoy her other books. I've read Reminders of Him. I really enjoyed that book. I've read, of course, what else? I read It Starts With Us, and of course I read It Ends With Us. After that, I think those are the only books in this one I've read from her. But I would definitely still pick up more because I did enjoy the others. So there is that on Verity. The next book I read was Book Lovers by Emily Henry, right here. This book, I've read The People We Meet on Vacation. I absolutely love that. So I was definitely interested in trying other books from Emily Henry. And this book, I gave it a 3-star. It was just okay. So this book is about Nora Stevens, who's like this literary agent, and she meets her, this is basically enemies to lovers, if you will. She meets her like arch nemesis, hates him, and yeah, they just don't vibe. And then she ends up going on like a trip with her sister, and she sees her arch nemesis. It's just basically enemies to lovers, and they kind of like fall for each other kind of thing, you know. But it was just okay, because for me, I hate a predictable book, and I predicted like everything, what was going to happen, the conflicts and different things like that. It was just very much boring. And even how it ended, it was so predictable, and that's something I do not enjoy in a book. If I can predict what's going to happen, I don't want it. Like Lifetime movies, like so predictable. So I gave it a 3-star. It was an easy read because Emily Henry books are very, very easy reads for me. But yeah, it was just okay. So there's that. We're gonna go through the books we read on Audible last. Okay, the next book, physical book I read was the infamous A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Now, I accidentally gave this book a 5-star on Goodreads, but I really wanted to give it like a 4.5, because 5 stars, it has to be a book that like just lives rent free in my head. And this isn't one of those. It was a really, really good book, but certain parts of it was just I didn't enjoy certain parts. So I just, like, at the end, it was needed to happen. The ending, like, last 100 pages needed to happen. I understand why that happened, but I didn't thoroughly enjoy them. I was ready for it to end, like, to see what would happen, if that makes sense. So this book is about Feyre. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Feyre, who is this huntress. This is a fantasy, of course. She lives in this world where she's kind of next to this other world. It's a fantasy book, y'all. It's a lot to explain. So basically, it gives me like Beauty and Beast, but not the actual story, but like she's this human person and there's this immortal beast, or whatever you want to call him, and she ends up killing a friend of theirs or someone connected to them, and she ends up being held captive by this person. And she realizes that they're not as bad as her human world made them out to be, and starts getting a connection, if you will. So there's a lot that goes on in this book. It's just a lot. But I really, really enjoyed the fantasy world. I really enjoyed everything that went on, the twists, the turns, but like I said, but it was just certain parts I wish would have went by faster, but I really enjoyed. I am excited to read the next book, because this book is like a lot of people love it. So I'm really, really excited to read it. But yeah, I give it about like a 4.5. And yeah, I'm trying to say some things without saying too much, if that makes sense. But if you love a good fantasy book, I would definitely suggest this. Especially just get the first book and see if it's your vibe. And yeah, there's that. And I believe the last physical book I read, yes, is Whiteout right here. And this book is by 6 different authors: Danielle Clayton, Tiffany D. Jackson, Nick Stone, Angie Thomas, Ashley Woodfolk, and Nicola Yoon. This book was actually written by 6 Black authors. I believe they're mostly romance authors. I'm so sorry, I'm shaking this. 6 romance authors. And I picked this book up because Lily reads on YouTube. She has like a book club, and so this was the January pick of the month. So I was like, okay, I have to grab it. And this is very much YA romance, if you will. It's very corny, but in such a cute way. I really enjoyed it. I read it super fast, like in 2 days, and I gave this book a 5-star. Now, looking hindsight 2020, I probably should have gave it a 4.5. But yeah, it's about these friends. It's quite a few friends, but it's about these friends. They're based in Atlanta. Like, I think it's like a group of friends. They're all connected one way or other to one person. I love the representation in this book. You had people, of course, of different genders, of different races, and like religions. And then you also have some LGBTQ plus representation in this book, which it was really nice. Basically, they are banding together. So basically the main character, let me get her name really quick because it's so many characters in this book. That's the one thing I didn't enjoy, that there were like so many, because it's written by 6 different authors. I think that's why there's so many characters, and each story tied together and made one story, but they were all written by different authors. But Stevie is the main character. So Stevie is in a relationship with, what is her name? I'm trying to remember. I'm drawing a blank. Stevie is in a relationship. Well, she's in a relationship with her girlfriend, right? And so everybody is somehow connected to either Stevie or her girlfriend. And they end up, they're like 17 years old, last year of high school, and they end up, or 16 or 17, somewhere right there. And they end up breaking up. Basically, Stevie goes over her girlfriend's house, and they've been best friends since the 6th grade. And their parents don't know that they are in a relationship. They think they're just best friends. And so Stevie was supposed to go over her girlfriend's house and basically come out to her, to her parents. And she ended up being so nervous and ruining it. And Stevie is like this genius in chemistry, and she ends up ruining it. And so all the people in this story are somehow either, like I said, connected to either Stevie or her girlfriend. And she's trying to make up this big old apology to apologize to her girlfriend, get her girlfriend back. And it's really, really cute. I really enjoyed it. But like I said, it had a lot of characters and just a lot of moving parts going on. And a lot of people are invested in these two people. So yeah, I did enjoy this book, but like it was, I think the only reason 4.5 because it's just so much going on type thing. So there's that. So those were all the physical books that I read. So now I read listened to 2 books on Audible. So hopefully I can kind of insert them somewhere in here so you can see them. But the first book I read was The Game You Played by Annie Taylor. And I gave this book a 5-star. And this one was quite good. It was really, really, no, I gave it a 4-star, but it was really like 4.5, 4.75. Like I said, I'm really strict with, I really have to feel something be moved, or like the book has to live rent-free in my head, or something I would definitely reread for me to give it a 5 stars. But this book was really good. So this book is basically about this lady, what is her name? Why can't I remember names? Well, I don't really remember her name. But basically, her little boy was kidnapped while they were at like the lake or something. Her and her husband were at the lake, and her little boy was kidnapped. And this basically follows her journey of finding her little boy over 6 months to a year, I want to say. And of course, there's just a lot of twists and turns. At one point, you don't know who does it. And I really enjoyed the twists and turns because it took me on a ride. The person who narrated the book on Audible was really entertaining. It wasn't a boring, like, monotone voice or anything like that. So I really enjoyed that. So yeah, that's all I can say about that without spoiling the book. But it was really, really good. And so the next book I read on Audible or listened to was a book by Victor Methos. And that was the first time I ever listened to a book by him. It was called A Killer's Wife. And when I saw the title, I just had to listen to it because that's my vibe. I'm definitely a true crime girl. So like mystery, thriller is up my alley. So A Killer's Wife is basically about this lady. Her name was Yardley? I believe her name was Yardley. It was. Well, her last name was Yardley. So her name was Jessica Yardley. And basically, she was married to the serial killer when she was younger. And when she found out, when they came to arrest him, that he was a serial killer, and she was pregnant with a baby. So that's the backstory. So basically, how the story begins is she had a daughter. Her daughter is like 16, 17 years old. And she's like this genius, just like her father. She sees so much of her father in her child. And basically, after this happened, she found out her husband, now ex-husband, was a serial killer. She went to school and she became like a prosecutor of some sort, like a prosecutor and a prosecutor attorney. And so someone decides to copy her ex-husband's crimes. So they bring her in and say, hey, can you help us? You might have some insight. And she's like, wait, hold on. She really doesn't want to be a part of it at first, but then she just gets drawn into it, if you will. So yeah, that's what happened. And it's a lot of twists and turns because the ex-husband gets involved. There's a lot of things that goes on with the daughter. So yes, this was definitely like a 4.75 for me. I really enjoyed it. I would definitely read more from this author. So yes, I think that is all I have. So now we're going to get into like the spoilers, if you will. I'm not gonna spoil every book because some books just don't need to be exaggerated on. So first book, I guess I will go in order of how I read them. So Jack and Jill. Do I have any spoilers? Of course. Okay, so let's get into the spoilers. What really happened in this book? So this book, like I said, Alice Cross, there's this little black girl, black children are being killed in the neighborhood. And the case he's dealing with is, the other case he's dealing with is like people in politics are being killed, and you're really trying to figure out who's killing who. And at first I thought it was the person he was working with closely, but it ended up being the person who was over the department. It was just crazy. But this book had a lot of twists and turns. But I actually enjoyed that this one, even though he likes someone, because I feel like every other book, he ends up falling for somebody he shouldn't be falling for. Like, he always falls for, the first book, he fell for the other person that was supposed to be working with him, like one of the detectives. And she ended up working with the criminals, some of the criminals. And then the second book, he fell for the victim in the case that survived. And I'm like, that's real out of pocket, you know what I'm saying? So I really enjoyed this book where he didn't, like, even though he had feelings or had liked one of the people, he didn't act upon it, if you will. But we'll see if it happens in the next book. But basically the situation, that it kind of interconnected, because come to find out, the person who was killing the young girls, or I keep saying young girls, it was boys and girls, but the black kids in the community that came from the school his son went to, was like a 13 or 14-year-old child who wasn't even a part of that neighborhood. And he ended up, so Alex had the crush on the principal at the school, and he, like, the little boy ended up spiraling. He was like bipolar manic. He ended up spiraling and goes and he holds her hostage and all these things, holds the principal hostage. So he has to go in. And yeah, so I really, like I said, I really enjoyed this book. And let me know if I'm not being as detailed in my spoilers, or y'all want me to touch on anything else. But like I said, it really was a lot going on in the book with the two cases, but how they kind of interconnected in kind of a way. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about that. But that's kind of why that happened. Now, The Darkest Minds. Oh my goodness, this book is so good. Okay, let's start off by saying the reason. At first, I was like really not feeling this book at all, because I felt like it was just so stupid. The like reason why because there was never like, they didn't get a disease. Like, there was no disease. It was just like, basically the kids hit puberty and either they died or they had all these special powers that were super dangerous. Like, y'all couldn't come up with, oh, they ate infected food, and all the kids just randomly did this, like they were aliens or something. Like, that got me. Like, I feel like that was the stupidest thing, but it trumped it with all the other things. So basically, Ruby, of course, 10 years old, she ends up with these special powers on her 10th birthday. Basically, her power is that she can erase people's memories. And so basically what they would do once they felt like that the children got infected, like it's so similar to, like, it reminded me of like the COVID pandemic, if you will, because like they had like signs and symptoms for the parents to look out for, and if they looked out for it, they had to quarantine. It was just crazy. So in that manner, but not the rehab camps by far. And so her parents called the police, and before the police got there, the people who like controlled the rehab camps ended up coming, and that's how they didn't know, because there were different levels. Some people had lesser invasive powers than others. You had the greens, I think it was green, yellow, oranges, and red. Yeah. And she was an orange, but she tricked them into thinking she was a green. So at her camp, where she ended up going to camp, they got rid of all the oranges and reds, but she flew under the radar when she got in, because she basically kind of lied to them and told them, made them believe she was a green when she was actually orange. So orange people, oranges and reds, they kind of found them more dangerous. So yeah. So basically someone kind of finds out that she's an orange, and they go to tell her they're saving her, but actually they were not. And she really figured it out on the way, you know, she figured it out, so she runs for it. And she sees this girl, Zoo, in a store when she was supposed to be changing like this gas station place, but she sees Zoo. And she's like, okay, I have to get away from these people. So let me follow her and see if there are other kids. And that's how she stumbled upon these other kids. So you have Zoo, Liam, Chubbs. Yeah, I think it's just Zoo, Liam, Chubbs, and then her. That's who makes up this group. And they were trying to find, I think it's called the East River. Yeah, the East River, where they could, like, there was apparently someone there who helped people, like, find their families, because they've been separated from their families and everything like that. Or they could stay there, and that was their home, their safe haven, or whatever. Because the camps is what you would think. It's just wasn't a good place for them. It was just a lot of trauma and things of that nature. So at first, Chubbs was just very against her. He was like, no, we said we wasn't going to invite anybody else, blah, blah, blah. But Liam is more of like the leader of the group or whatever. And he kind of like starts liking her, and he's like, no, we're going to keep her, blah, blah, blah. And she's scared to tell them that they don't want her because she's really orange. She's scared because they are just greens and yellows, right? So there's like a lot of things that happen. Of course, they have people looking for her, because for one, someone took her from the camp. Because the people who took her from the camp, I think this called like the Legions or something. I can't remember, but they really didn't have good intentions. And so she escaped from them. So she has the people in the camp looking for her, and these people looking for her, because they know she has these powers, and not many oranges are left at this point. And they want to, of course, use her powers for bad, or for their uses. And so, of course, she doesn't want to be with them. So she has these people look for her. So they like hit a bunch of, snags in the road, because they're still trying to travel to get to the East River. And at one point, she has to use her powers. She realizes how she can use her powers to a certain extent. She doesn't know how to control her powers of erasing people's memories or getting people to do what she wants them to do by controlling their minds. So she realized she could when she had to save them at one point. And that's how they found out she was a orange, but she was kind of scared. They didn't want to be around her, but of course it was a family situation. So basically I mean, there's so much more to this story, and there are like a bunch of like sequels or like books after this. But like I'm saying, in the end, the ending is what got me, and the ending is what makes me not want to read any more of the books. Because basically, long story short, they go to the East River. They find the East River, and the person who's like over the East River is basically the president's son, who was supposed to be turned back into good. He was allegedly rehabilitated, but he never was. He basically used his powers, and he was like one of the only. He was the only orange he knew. He was an orange as well, so he could control minds. So he controlled the minds of the other people to think that he was rehabilitated, and he's now controlling this like East River situation. But it ends up being like another camp, but not as strict. Like, they're not allowed to leave when they want to. They have to get permission from him to leave. It wasn't as bad because they were working together, but they just realized that, you know, it really wasn't much better than the camp that they came from. And so they wanted to leave. And then he tried to make advances on Ruby, and she had already fallen for Liam, and it was just a whole thing. But the ending, basically what she had to do is the Legions, at one point, Chubbs got injured and she thought he was gonna die. And so while she was with I keep thinking, is it the Legions? If you read this book, you know what I'm talking about. They gave her a necklace. If you ever need help, you hit this button and we'll come running. So she kept it the entire time, even though she knew she really didn't want to be with them, but like as a security blanket. So at one point, like I said, Chubbs ended up getting hurt to the point that she knew they couldn't handle it, and she thought he was gonna die, blah blah blah. So she ended up hitting this button, and the Legion's people came and got them. Well, backstory, it's so much that I can't really go into full detail of everything. Liam was in this Legion's before, but he left and he never wanted to be in it, blah blah blah. So when they came and got both of them. Chubbs, they took him off to the hospital somewhere because he had been shot. He was either shot or stabbed, I can't remember. So I had both of them. So she made a deal with the head person at the Legions that if to let Liam go and she would stay and help them. But she just wanted him let go because she knew he did not want to be in that life, and she knew that he had family to find and stuff like that. I believe. I'm pretty sure he had family. I can't remember. It's been a minute. But so the lady finally agreed, and she went to talk to him. And at this point, they falling for each other. They love each other. But she knew the only way he would leave without her is to erase herself from his memories. So like they have this last kiss, and she erases his memories, but then she alters it where he believes Chubbs went to hospital and Chubbs is okay, because at that point they don't know. And that literally broke me. I mean, shambles, because like what do you say? Like, this person you fall in love, your first love, and you have to erase yourself from his memories. Like, he probably will never remember you. Even if you see him again, he won't remember you or remember the times y'all had and the love y'all shared. It was just heartbreaking. So there's that on that book. So let's see, what was the next book I read? I'm all over the place. Oh, Good Girl, Bad Girl. I kind of went into this. Like I said, very much James Tanner and Alex Cross. But the situation was Evie Cormack was like, the little girl, she was found in a house where they had found this man. He was dead for 2 months while she hid in the house. The backstory on I don't want to ruin it, but basically they think maybe he assaulted her or something like that. I'm not going to ruin in case you read the other book, When She Was Good. So they think she assaulted her, and when they ask, like, what's your name, they come to find her, what's your name? She never gives a name. She never gives them her birthday, anything like that. We know in this book that she knows her birthday, but she's protecting someone or something. So that's that's who Evie Cormack is. That's a little background on her. Cyrus Haven, of course, is French psychologist. He's called in to like see if she is of mental stability, sign all of that, to basically be released on her own. But there's some discrepancies, because she's like, I should release, I'm 18. I'm about to be 18, but because no one knows her real birth date, they're saying she's not ready, because she's like violent. She's running away from a lot of the foster homes. She's like just violent and stuff. And one specific thing about her is like, she's a truth teller. She can tell when people are lying. So there's that. So they call him in, and he bonds with her because, like I mentioned before, he basically came home and his whole family had been murdered by he had twin sisters, I believe, or they were little sisters. I believe they were twins though. And his mom and dad were murdered by his older brother. Yeah. His older brother, and he ended up having schizophrenia. So someone takes him in, and, he ends up being a forensic psychologist. So he ends up taking her in, because he takes her into his home and, like, fosters her or whatever. And she reads it totally wrong way, because of course someone who has been through abuse, they kind of misconstrue things, but he's like, no, I don't want anything sexual from you, because he's a grown man. So there's that. So how intertwined, the other case he was working on was a girl, Jody Sheehan. So she goes missing. She's like I want to say American, but I think this book is based in England, London, that area. She's an ice skater, and she's like the junior world champion, everything, and people know she's the next big thing. She's had stories in the paper about her and things like that. She basically goes missing, and child, it was a mess. So they end up finding her dead. So long story short, child, she was pregnant. This was juicy. She ends up being pregnant. So of course they're investigating her family life after they find her. She has an older brother they're looking at. She has her father, but she's trying by her uncle, if you go with me here. So she's trying by her uncle, and they end up finding out she has multiple phones, and and so first they think she's doing something like illegal with her brother, because her brother was like, was he selling girls? No, I think he was selling different things. He was doing stuff illegal. And so they like, because they look in her locker, going through all that, they find a whole bunch of money, they find extra phones, and of course they find out she's pregnant. So they want to know who's the baby father. So of course, at first they think, because her uncle who was training her in the ice skating, he's had other accusations against him. So of course they think it's him. And then basically we come to find out that it is her cousin. So her cousin, which is, what was his name? Don't remember. But her cousin basically starts falling for her, right? And they think, oh, it's not really that big of a deal, or anything like that, because we're cousins. This has been done before. First of all, y'all nasty. But no, but come to find out, her cousin was really her brother. So her uncle and his wife, her aunt, were having trouble conceiving. So she ended up sleeping with Jody, the girls who went missing, her father, and that's how she got pregnant with her cousin. So she never, that of course nobody knew that they were related until all this is coming out. So they finally pieced this together because of course they're digging more and more into the case, trying to figure out who because of course they had found her dead. So who killed the girl? Okay. And so at this point they're like, okay, because for 1 minute they thought that it was this random guy. They found out it wasn't him. Then they really thought it was the uncle. And then they started piecing together that it was her cousin. But so they were like, okay, did he kill her because she got pregnant? And then come to find out it was her aunt who killed her because she wanted to keep the baby. She knew that she was pregnant and she wanted to keep the baby, but they didn't know they were brother and sister and that they really couldn't keep the baby. Or, you know, she didn't want them to keep the baby so it would bring her secret out. So she goes and, because I think at this point they have the baby daddy, we're going to call him the baby daddy, in custody because they think, okay, he killed her. So she goes to Cyrus's house, the forensic psychologist, and Evie's there at the home, and she ends up holding her hostage and everything like that. And so it's just a lot of twists and turns. This book was really, really good. And so yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I cannot wait to read more from Michael Robotham. This is going to be long, but you know, such is life. Child, okay, Verity was some effed up stuff. Like, okay, so like I said, you have Lowen, the struggling writer. Basically what happens, on her way to the meeting, her agent, okay, let's start with agent. So her and her agent was like having a little rendezvous at one point, but then she found out he was in a relationship, so she ended things and she just put him on a basically agent basis, blah, blah, blah. Her mother had passed away recently and she was broke. She needed some money. So she goes to this meeting. On her way to the meeting, she actually meets the husband, but she don't know he's the husband. She witnesses an accident. He sees her. He sees her and, you know, helps her clean up because she gets like blood. The accident, a man is killed by a car and the blood gets all on her, and he helps her clean up in a bathroom, and they go their separate ways, right? They have this like weird connection in there, but they go their separate ways. And then as she's walking to the meeting, she sees him. His name is Jeremy. And she realizes once they get in the meeting, he's part of the meeting. And he is the one who convinces her to take the deal. He actually says, hey, they're lowballing you. They can give you more money to write the books, blah, blah, blah. So she ends up, of course, having to go to their home. So, of course, it's Verity, Jeremy, and their younger 5-year-old son. And she has to go through her office, and the bank thing is, so, hey, you're going to go through her office and look for the rest of, like, any notes she had on the rest of the books. I think there was 3 more books to write in the series, so any notes she had or what she wanted it to be about, blah, 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 right? So basically, Verity, the best time-selling author, she was in an accident. That's what they were telling her. But once Lowen gets there, she realized that she's basically just there. She's not paralyzed. That's what's interesting. But they say she has just like a mind of a, like, her mind is just not there. She was in a car wreck and she hit a tree. And so she's not paralyzed. She can move and stuff, but she just doesn't, basically. You would think she's just like a quadriplegic or something like that, but she's not, if you will. So she goes in the office, looks for notes for the books, and she ends up finding her autobiography, right? And this autobiography was so disturbing, and I don't have children. So basically, she's just this horrible person, basically. Verity is just very effed up. And it was, I wish I would have like flagged some. It was some parts about how, it was about how, it started off how Verity met Jeremy. Like, she was looking for someone with money, and she went to this charity event, and she met Jeremy. And she found out that Jeremy really didn't have any money, right? So, but she ended up liking him anyway, blah, blah, blah. And she just very much gave narcissistic, Verity, narcissistic, like self-centered, she was just awful. And then in the books, it talks about how she just loved him so much, everything was perfect until he loved something more than her, right? And so we come to find out that those are her kids. So, like I mentioned, she had a little boy, but she had two other little girls prior, and they passed away. One passed away from food allergy, and one passed away from like a drowning accident. Because Lowen had the struggling author, she looked it up before she went there, because she's like, wait, if I'm finna go there and they got something crazy going on, I don't really want to go there. So she was like, okay, it's two separate incidences, could be a coincidence. So long story short, she ended up getting pregnant, and she just felt like he was so enthralled. Like, anybody would want their husband to be enthralled, or they were like dating at the time, to be enthralled with them. And he was just like, oh, do you want anything to eat? And she was just not really happy. She did not want to have the baby. She felt like the baby was going to ruin her. And this is all in the autobiography. So how the book is set up, she's like reading a chapter, and then she's coming out to maybe eat or talk to Jeremy, or, you know, whatever. But in the midst of this, her reading her autobiography, she's supposed to be working on her book. But then certain things start happening. She starts falling for Jeremy, different things of that nature. And then she started thinking that the wife Verity is like getting up, you know, type thing. Like, she's getting up. So it's like a really like suspense thriller part thrown in there. And lo and behold, at the end we find out that old girl was getting up, you know. And the little boy keeps saying, mom's talking to me, mommy's talking to me. But they just brushed on the rug at first, because they're like, oh, he's just, you know, hearing things or whatever. They don't think nothing of it. So basically, she's just awful. The thing she talks about, she ended up she didn't like her kids. The one part that got me was when she said, because when Jeremy would go to work, and she was like a stay-at-home mom at the time. This point, the little boy was born. Yeah, the twin girls, because I don't know if I mentioned they were twins, the girls, but they just ended up dying in separate coincidences. The twins, she hated being a mother. She didn't want to wash him and things of that nature. So when he would go to work, she would let them cry and sit in their filth and be hungry until right before he came home, and she would get up and feed them, clean them, and then make dinner. Like, she had been taking care of them all day. And I was just, it was so many things. Even the way she talked about trying to abort the baby, it was just terrible. And if you're a mother or you've lost a child, I would not suggest this book to you at all. I really wouldn't suggest it to anybody. It's just very disturbing. But the part, so we all like, okay, Verity's effed up. So basically we come to find out that she ends up growing a bond with one of the daughters, right? One is on the spectrum, one is not. And so she ends up having a bond with the one that isn't on the spectrum, and she doesn't have one with the other. And she has a dream that the one who's autistic kills the other. And so she just felt like in her mind that one, that baby was always going to kill the other one. So they were away and at like sleepover. And the first daughter dies from not food poison, but a food allergy. She was allergic to peanuts. And in her head, she just was like, okay, she killed her. She did this to her on purpose. So she already didn't like the little girl. So now she hated her. So, so at this point, she had already had the little boy. And Jeremy noticed the differences she was making in the child. So basically, long story short, she took her daughter and the little boy out on the lake. They lived by lake. And she basically killed her, she pushed the little boat over that they were in and killed the little girl and saved the little boy. And so, yeah. So it was just it's so many disturbing points. So we're like, okay, she's effed up, blah, blah, blah. So, like I said, in between the chapters, Lowen, her and him, they start falling for each other. They start, all of this. And Lowen is telling Jeremy, hey, you're sacrificing your whole life because, this lady, she can't do anything for herself. Like, she has to be changed, bathed. Like, she has to have a nurse. And when a nurse isn't there, he has to do it for himself. All this, all that. And so Lowen just knew that the lady was faking it, basically. And she was right. She was faking it. And so at one point, they end up convincing, she's like, no, she's faking it, blah, blah, because he allegedly does not know about these diaries. Okay, this autobiography. He doesn't know that she killed, their daughter. So she's trying to prove to him, like, I'm not crazy. She can move. She's getting up, because he's like, at one point, she's being so insistent that he's like, okay, we have to end this. You need to leave, type thing. And she gets a camera and she basically proves to him that she can move. And so he goes in there and I can't remember because it's been a minute at what point she gives him the autobiography so he can actually read how vile she is and things of that nature. And so she hands, long story short, once he finds out she can move and thinks that, he goes in and confronts her. And he's like, get up, get up, get up. And so she comes alive. Verity comes alive. And she's like pleading with him because he sees red at this point because he's like, you killed my daughter. How could you do this? Da, da, da. And he just flips. And because at one point she tried to kill the little girl before she was successful by like smothering her with her hand, I believe. So, no, she was, it was vile. I'm not even going to go into that. It wasn't smother. She tried to choke her to death, basically. So, he looks along because Lowen is them three in the room. And he's like, I have to do something. I have to do something. And she was like, you can't kill her. You have a son. He won't have the parents anymore. He said, what do I do? She can't not be alive. She looks at this man and says, you remember how she was going to kill your daughter? You have to do it that way. So they can't tell. At this point, I'm like, oh no. And she sits on the floor while he chokes her. Not like this, like, not chokes her, but chokes her with his face. It was vile, okay? And at this point, all y'all jacked up because what? Like, what? What? Like, is that what we do? I would never, like, and so they're like, they can be together. So basically, long story short, they make up this story, like, agree, that she died in her sleep type thing, and make up a way how she's found, blah, blah, blah. And she ends up leaving for a little bit, and then he brings her back. And long story short, she gets pregnant, and they're cleaning. They decide to, be together. And I think, did they get married or were engaged or something like that? And they go to clean. Of course, they move out the house that they were in, and they go to clean out the house. And Lauren was cleaning out the room, and under Verity's bed that she was in that room, she found like a place in the floor where there was stuff in it. So she pulls out a letter, right? This is where it gets crazy. She pulls out a letter that Verity had written to Jeremy. And it was basically explaining away the entire autobiography about her autobiography, because clearly she was a writer. So her autobiography was really just a writing exercise. And basically makes everything that happened in the book null and void. That Jeremy actually found the autobiography before Lauren even came into the picture. That Jeremy actually is the one who wrecked the car, and he because he thought she killed the baby. So basically it was saying that everything in the autobiography was a writing exercise, and that's not really what happened, and how could you believe this happened, and all of this, right? So Lauren's reading this. So basically this would mean that Jeremy knew before she even came, and that he used her to kind of find it, and you know what I'm saying? Because he already tried to kill her, because allegedly. And this is the part that was unbelievable to me, because so he would rely on some stranger to come in and do what? You know what I'm saying? Like, what was she supposed to do? How did he know that she was going to fall for him and tell him how to kill her and get rid of her? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why it was kind of unbelievable. But it was all effed up, because at this point I can't even, because Verity wrote a letter. I know you found the autobiography. I would never do those things. It was a writing exercise, because she wrote like more mystery thrillers. So I had to get in the mind of a villain and blah, 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 blah. And we don't have all day, so I can go through the entire, like, everything that happened verbatim. But like the letter was just unbelievable. So she saw it. So my question is, I would have questions, because if I saw this letter that basically said, so I helped you kill an innocent woman, if this letter is true, help you kill an innocent woman. What? Like, and you used me because you already allegedly knew about the autobiography, and you're the one who tried to kill her, and the reason she was fake playing like she was like incapable of doing anything is to get away from you. Like, but it was just unbelievable. Like, that last chapter was just crazy. So I feel like the whole book was all around effed up. But like I said, it was an easy read, quick read, and it was one of them things where it's so messed up you have to keep reading. So that's why that book got a 2 stars, because it was just, the book was just bad. Okay, let's get into Book Lovers. Book Lovers was like I said, excuse me, about, what was her name? Oh, Nora Stevens. Okay, yeah, Nora Stevens, her arch enemy was Charlie Lastra. She first met him because she's a literary agent, so she like represents different authors and connects them with editors and things like that. So she had this author, I can't really remember her name, but it's not that important. She wrote this book about Sunshine Falls, North Carolina, and she went to meet with Charlie Lasher. That's her first time meeting him, to sell a book about this town. And he shuts it down, and he was just very rude about it, right? So at this point, from there on, she hated him. And she ended up selling the book to like another editor. It ended up like being a best time seller. At this point, they're writing up, doing a movie about it, blah, blah, blah. So she has a younger sister, and their mother died when she was in like college, like maybe a junior or something in college, like she was very young. And she had this little sister. So once her mother passed away, their father wasn't in the picture. She decided, okay, of course she's going to take her sister in and raise her. And, you know, because I think the sister was, like I said, in her teenage years when her mother passed. So she just always felt protective of her sister, always trying to make everything better for her sister. And she was more of a helicopter mom, and she tried to always fix things, right? So her sister, you know, gets older, and at a very young age, she gets married. She has these kids, and her sister's like on her third pregnancy, and she's stressed, and she's like, she loves the book that's, I forgot the name of it, the exact name of it, but her sister's name is Libby, and I'm just dropping stuff, but her sister's name is Libby, and she loves the book that's written about Sunshine Falls. So she was like, I need to decompress. Come with me to this little town, okay? So that's where she runs into Charlie Lastra. And the reason she finds out he hated the book so much is because he's from there. And he was like, this book isn't believable because the author who wrote the book never even visited the town. And he knew it just by reading. So he hated it. And it's like, it's basically a small town romance, but enemies to lovers at the same time. And why I say it was so predictable, because I knew, he tells her early on that his father had a stroke. So I knew it was more like she loved the big city, and she could never live in a small town, be with a small town guy. And her sister had written all these like things they should do in the small town type thing, because they were from New York City, from New York. And so I pretty much predicted, okay, Charlie, she's gonna fall for Charlie. Charlie's gonna have to stay to help take care of his dad. How's it gonna, and they were of course really into books. Her sister was really into books. I of course figured out early on the sister ends up wanting to move there to have a more simpler life, and she just didn't want her sister to move. Because that's all she knew. That was her blanket. That was her security blanket. She had sacrificed a lot for her sister. And so I really knew. It was just so predictable to me. The conflict, he has to stay here to help take care of his family. They fall for each other, but they can't be together because she's going back to New York. It was solved because the sister ended up moving there and ended up helping run the bookstore that his family owned. And you know, his dad got better, so he goes back to New York to go after his girl. That's the basic story. The reason I gave it 3 stars because I mean, it was very predictable. Like, it was like clear as day what was gonna happen, the conflicts and everything like that. So that's why I gave it that book a 3 star. Let's see. Next, let's go in order. The game you played, like, oh, okay. So this was the one where the little boy went missing. Tommy went missing. So basically, long story short, she was married, and she just didn't enjoy motherhood. You come to find out that like she struggled with being a mother, struggled with being anxious and different things like that. So this book is told from one chapter is her, then one chapter is her husband. So this point, we're trying to figure out who kidnapped, because of course the book starts with a little boy being kidnapped, and it goes from 6 months to a year of her trying to find her son. So of course she's very depressed. She ends up going to this therapist who puts her on like this sleeping pill, which causes her to sleepwalk. And in the beginning, you see they keep finding these letters that are written to, that they think is written to them in code about who really has the child. And so they put up security cameras and find out that it's her writing the letters, or allegedly. Basically, you find out that it was one of her best friends. And okay, let's backtrack. So they end up like falling out. Her and her husband end up breaking up. He ends up dating one of the friends, but she doesn't know it's one of their friend groups from when they were younger, like high school age. And so she doesn't know he's dating, that's who he's dating, but she figures out they break up or whatever. She starts dating someone else, and but she's still searching for her son. It's a whole bunch of twists and turns. At one point, they really feel like, okay, it's her who did it, because she's being set up and framed, basically. She is the one who actually did something with the son. He's like, what did you do with the son? Of course, after they find out that she's sending the letters, or so they think. Um, but basically, long story short, when they were younger in this friend group, because her husband was in this friend group as well before they even got together. There was this girl that they kind of used to hang out with, but then she ended up being an outcast because something happened in this house in the neighborhood. And basically what happened was a lady gets killed, but you don't find out to the end. A lady was killed and they thought that she did it. The girl, the outcast. But as she's investigating more about who killed who took her son, she runs into this lady and talks to her like, hey, what happened? And so she ends up exposing that the person that had done certain things who actually killed the lady was the girl in her friend group. I cannot remember her name. Was one of her best friends. Was it? I can't remember. Okay, no, it doesn't say her name really quick in this like little synopsis of it, but and this is the same person. Why do I want to say it was Kitty? I don't think it was. Who is sleeping with her husband? Well, her soon-to-be ex-husband. Who's with him, and he doesn't know she even has his child. So, basically, long story short, she had this thing for him when they were younger, but he clearly had the thing for his now wife, and so she ended up taking the child because she felt like he would be better, and they go off. It was this whole thing. So basically, long story short, it was the friend of the family who took it, and she tried to take the husband, and they end up going off like selling, because she ended up buying some property because the husband was like a real estate person. So she buys some property on this island, and they go off on the island, and that's when they start he finds out that she had the son, but he thought initially that she just found him at first, and his wife had been keeping him from him and blah blah blah. But then the person that took the little boy, she had an older daughter, and she knew that he had been up in their attic for a while, you know what I'm saying? And so she ended up telling him. He finds out it's this whole thing. While he's finding out, the wife has been putting two and two together and blah blah, and so it's this whole thing. They're reunited, blah blah. So that's what happens with that. It was really good. Of course, I just can't go into too many details, but those are the highlights of the book. Let's see. A Killer's Wife. Okay, Killer's Wife. Like I said, Jessica Yardley was a prosecutor, but originally she was married to a serial killer. She had a daughter. Now, the daughter, child, she was very troubled, a troubled teenager at this point, because she was very much like her father. Her father had a genius IQ and things like that. So she just knew a lot, but she was just in her rebellious stage. So like I said, the detective approaches her, says, hey, we need you involved in this case. There's a copycat killer, and we need to figure this out. Long story short, child, the copycat killer was her fiance. So, in this book, she ends up having to go see the ex-husband because he's actually on death row. I don't think I mentioned that. He's on death row, and he's wanting an opportunity basically off death row. So he somehow finds her fiance. What was his name? Once again, I don't remember, and I'm not going to dig through it. I might need to start taking better notes. But he finds the fiance, and he has him, like, watch her and stuff. They end up having a connection. She ends up falling for him, like. And basically, a bunch of twists and turns. She finally finds out that her fiance is the copycat killer. So now she feel like she's been duped twice, okay? But in the midst of this, the ex-husband's like, I want to see my daughter. I want to see my daughter. But she's never seen him. She doesn't want her to see him. And so basically, long story short, child, they found out that her fiance was an they feel like he's committed like a bunch of murders. And one of the murders they think he committed was like killing this like 15-year-old, like years and years. It was like a 15, 16-year-old years and years and years ago. So, long story short, after the visit with his daughter, he gets his daughter to frame the man for this murder. So he can stay in there. It's just a bunch of twists and turns. Because at first you think the fiance is gonna get off because he definitely was the copycat killer. But how they got him was he was framed for a murder that her ex-husband had did earlier on, and he used the daughter, and that was the most like scene that stuck out for me, because it's like, okay, she's psychotic too at this point, and it more so leads you to the theme of, is it like nature versus nurture type thing? Because before her meeting with her dad, she never talked to her dad, never seen his dad. She heard the stories and things like that. But yeah, and Yarly ends up finding out, but at this point, of course, she doesn't want to destroy the case and all of that. So it was a really good book because there were so many twists and turns, because it takes a while for them to even figure out that her fiance is the one who is the copycat killer. And he was like basically a big fan of her ex-husband or whatever. And yeah, he was a huge fan of her ex-husband. And he was basically using him to like create doubt for his case so he can maybe get off of death row. So that's what happened with that. So that's all I have to say about that book. And we're almost done. A Quarter Thorns and Roses. I feel like I said, it's Feyre, and Tamlin is like the beast or the immortal, I don't know what you call it, of this book, of A Quarter Thorns and Roses. Feyre, basically, she's hunting. First of all, the book had me messed up because she was the youngest of the kids. The dad lost his fortune, he was beat, and so they had money, but then they were broke, basically, and they had to find some way to eat. But once the money ran out, Feyre had to become the huntress and like kill, the deer, kill their food for their food. And what had me messed up was because she was the baby, and why wasn't the other ones doing anything? Okay, why wasn't the daddy getting up and getting his life together and working or doing whatever he had to do? And just wasn't happening. So, and this was, of course, I feel like it's set back. It's like back in ancient times and earlier times when you hunted your foods, or some of your food. So in this forest, they were like right next to this land of fairies and stuff like that. I think they're called fairies. But anyway, they were all told that they were horrible people. And before, in earlier times, these fairies, and yeah, they're called fairies, they owned, in High Fae, the humans were enslaved to these people. And it gave me very much slavery. But in that kind of way. So they felt they were horrible, blah, blah, blah. So Feyre was out hunting their food, and she ended up seeing this wolf, but she was like, oh, he's huge, so he has to be like a fairy or something. And she was led to believe they were horrible and things of that nature. Horrible. And so she decided to kill him. And she killed him with the one ash, like, bow she had, arrow she had. And it killed him dead. And so once she killed him, she had got this money for, like, his fur. And she also killed, it was something else he was out there. It was some else part of food. A deer or something. She killed the deer. She brought it back. And she ended up going to, like, their market in town and selling the fur, blah, blah, blah. that night, Tamlin, who knows Tamlin, he comes looking for her. It's like, hey, you have to come back to my land because you killed one of my fairies. And because we have a treaty with you guys, if you kill anything that's like a fairy that has not provoked you or tried to hurt you, then you have to like come back to our land and be not enslaved, because she wasn't enslaved, but you have to serve out the rest of your life there, basically. And so she goes there and she's scared. She's trying to find her way back to her family because she's like, hey, they won't eat without me, blah, 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 blah. And slowly but surely, she starts falling for him. Different things happen. He like buys her paint and canvas so she can paint because she likes to paint. Different things like that. So she ends up falling for him. And at this point, there's like blight going on in this world where their powers are not as strong as they should be because someone's diminishing their powers, and it's just a lot of things are happening. So he ends up falling for her too, and he ends up saying, hey, it's not safe for you. I'm going to send you back to your family, and your family going to think that a aunt, like, you went to go take care of a sick aunt. So he sends her back. He tells her he loves her, but she doesn't say it back because she just felt like her heart was breaking. She couldn't say it back since she couldn't be with him right then and there. So she goes back, and he had taken care of her family while she was gone. So she didn't have that to worry about. But then she started thinking and realizing that she couldn't just leave him because she knew he was in danger when she left. She knows he's in danger, so she ends up going back, and he's already been taking some, because basically he needed a human who killed one of the fairies unprovoked, and he needed her to fall in love with him, and for her to tell him that he loved that she loved him, so he could free this world, because someone had took ownership or took control of the lands, and he needed that to happen. So she kind of lied to him of why she was there. He kind of lied to her why she was there. And so she went back and she decided she wanted to fight for him. And it was this lady, I guess you'll call her queen, but I don't really remember her specific name. But she's the one who took over the country, over the kingdom, or whatever you want to call it. And she, basically at this point, it was too late. He only had a certain amount of time. And when he sent her away, it was like only 48 hours or something. And so by the time she came back, that time was over. So she was like, I have to find him. I have to do whatever it takes, blah, blah, blah. So this is when it becomes like a games type situation. So she goes through the cave to find him because the mansion where they were staying, their estate was destroyed. So she goes to find him, and she sees the lady, and he's just like her subject. And all his power is gone. And she was like, you have to do these 3 things, and if you do, then I will free him, or you can figure out the riddle to this point, and I'll free him. I'll free them instantly, because he wasn't just getting freed. All the lands were getting freed, if you will. So she couldn't figure out the riddle right off. And this was the point where I was just kind of like over, because this part was like over 100 chapters, and I just like needed it to end. So she goes through all these twists and turns, and she ends up winning, right? But then the queen was like, well, the tea is I never told you when I was going to free them, so I'm going to free them when I get ready. But then she figured out the answer to the riddle was love. And that's when they were freed immediately. Her powers were stripped. And it's just really a very, very cute story. A very like, but in my head, one thing I thought about is that he's supposed to be an actual beast, right? So it's like a human having sex with a beast. That was like creepy to me, but I get it's like a fantasy book. So that was like the spoilers about that. I definitely want to read more, but I hope it doesn't get ruined because this was a really good book. But I know some of the other books are longer. Let's see. Oh, and we're gonna get into Whiteout. Whiteout, like I said, it was a 6 authors who wrote this book, and it was about Stevie. I mean, there were so many characters in this book. You have Stevie and her girlfriend, then you have another girlfriend, then you have another friend. Because you have Stevie trying to come out to, Stevie and her girlfriend, they were both trying to come out to their parents. Then you have this Stevie's friend, her best friend. I think her name was Evan Rose. She was away at like this all girls boarding school. She had already thought she had feelings for girls. Then she found out that she did. So you have her situation, and then it was just so many people, like so many little relationships. They were cute, really, really cute. Let's see. I think at the back of the book, it talks about it. So yeah. Yeah, you have Stevie and Sola. And then Cass and I think her name was Portia. You have their situation. Then you have ER, which is Evan Rose and her girlfriend. But she also thought she was liking this guy. It was just a lot going on. But basically, it was basically about Stevie and Sola, right? But there were so many people involved in this teenage relationship, which was beyond me, which was like a little crazy. But the different, like I said, I love the representation, the LGBTQ plus. I also love, but they were just such cute little stories, but they blended well together, and that's what you don't see a lot when 6 authors are writing stories. They all blended very well together. So that's how, and there's actually, I think, a sequel maybe, but they have a book called Blackout. Because the whiteout part, I don't even think I mentioned it. It's them being in Atlanta in the middle of a snowstorm. And Stevie's trying to prove to Sola her love for her and blah, 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 blah. And she's using all her friends to like bring different things to this apology type situation. So that's what happened. And that is all I have for this very, very long January reading wrap up. I thought about doing TBRs, but I will not be doing TBRs, even though I personally know my TBRs, but this is already long enough. So yes, that's all we have for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.